When I stumbled across her hidden accounts and saw the amount, $10 million, it felt like my heart stopped. Sarah always told me she was working late, and I believed her. After all, 14 years of marriage is enough time to build a foundation of trust, where you don't second-guess your wife's every word. But these hidden millions, changed everything. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something far, far bigger. At first, I tried to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, a glitch in the bank system. I sat there, staring at the documents on her laptop, unable to believe what I was seeing. Sarah had never mentioned anything about having money like this. We lived comfortably, but nowhere near the kind of life that would allow her to hide millions in secret accounts. How had she managed to keep something this huge from me? Things had been off between us for a while, but I chalked it up to stress. Work had been consuming more of her time lately, and we were both getting older. People change, life gets complicated. Sarah had always been ambitious, constantly talking about meetings, projects, and deadlines. Late nights at the office became routine, and I never questioned them. I thought it was just part of her drive. I was proud of her career. Until now, since she'd started coming home later and later, I saw her less and less. I didn't pry, didn't ask too many questions. We'd built a marriage on mutual trust, or so I thought. But now, all of that trust felt like a joke. Her late nights, the sudden shopping sprees, the designer clothes, the new jewelry, none of it was what I thought. These weren't just the habits of a woman enjoying the fruits of her hard work. These were signs of something much more sinister. I started replaying moments in my head, noticing things I hadn't given much thought to before. The hushed phone calls that ended when I entered the room. The quick, vague answers she gave when I asked how her day was. She was always too busy, too wrapped up in work to offer me more than a superficial explanation. And I, like a fool, had let it slide. Now, everything felt suspicious, every interaction tinged with betrayal. As I sat at the kitchen table, her financial statements open on the screen in front of me, my mind raced with questions. But one question rose above the others. Where did this money come from? This wasn't our savings. I would have known if it were. The funds were coming from multiple sources, some of which I couldn't even begin to trace. The more I looked, the more it felt like she had an entirely different life, one that I wasn't a part of. $10 million. The sheer size of it was staggering. It wasn't just the money itself that rattled me. It was what it represented. This wasn't a woman who'd fallen in love with someone else, who was sneaking around behind my back because she'd grown tired of our marriage. No, this was a woman who had built a separate, secret world. A world I'd never been allowed to enter. And that was the part that terrified me most. The next morning, I couldn't look at her the same way. Everything about her, the way she smiled, the way she kissed me on the cheek before heading out the door, felt rehearsed, as if she had been playing a role this whole time, and I was just too blind to see it. The woman I had been married to for 14 years was a stranger. What else was she hiding? Who else was she hiding? And how long had this been going on? I tried to act normal, to go about my day like everything was fine. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time she texted me to say she'd be home late, my mind filled with images of her in that other life. Doing things, making decisions, spending that money on God knows what. Or who. I had no idea what to do next. But one thing was clear. Whatever this was, it was bigger than I'd imagined. The Sarah I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had lied to me in ways I was just beginning to comprehend. Couldn't let it go. After discovering those accounts, the questions gnawed at me like a persistent itch under the skin. Who was this woman I'd spent nearly half my life with? What kind of person hides millions from their husband? I wanted to confront her right away. Every time she came home, I had to fight the urge to grab her by the shoulders and demand answers. But I knew if I showed my hand too early, I might never get the truth. She was good at lying, that much was obvious. And I needed to be smarter. I decided to do what any rational man would do in my situation. I started digging. I couldn't just sit there, pretending like I didn't know. That evening, after she'd left for another late meeting, I opened her laptop again, half expecting it to be locked this time. But it wasn't. Her confidence, or maybe arrogance, was astonishing. She didn't even think I'd bother looking. 14 years of marriage, and she believed I was too clueless or too trusting to notice her secret life unfolding right in front of me. I searched through her emails, her documents, anything I could get my hands on. Most of it was just work-related. Presentations, reports, spreadsheets, nothing suspicious. But then, buried in a folder I almost didn't open, I found something. A scanned document, a contract. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, almost afraid of what I was about to see. And then, there it was, an agreement between her and some investment firm I'd never heard of, related to offshore accounts. Offshore accounts. Jesus Christ. I sat back, rubbing my temples, trying to process what I was seeing. Offshore accounts meant she was hiding money from more than just me. Maybe from the government, too. Was she involved in something illegal? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it sure as hell looked that way. And if she was, I could be dragged into it whether I wanted to be or not. I jotted down the name of the firm and the account numbers, my hands shaking slightly. What had I gotten myself into? No, what had she gotten me into? This was bigger than some affair. She wasn't just sneaking around behind my back with another man. She was operating in a whole different league. I was married to someone I didn't even recognize anymore. That night, when she got home, I forced myself to stay calm. She greeted me with the usual casual kiss on the cheek, the same tired smile she'd been using for the last few months. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice smooth, as if nothing had changed, as if she wasn't secretly sitting on millions of dollars, hiding them from me. "Fine," I muttered. I tried to meet her eyes, to see if there was any trace of guilt, any flicker that would betray her. But no, her expression was perfectly neutral. The same Sarah I'd known for years, or at least the same version she wanted me to see. She went upstairs to shower, and I sat there in the kitchen, staring at my hands. The weight of everything I'd found was crushing, and yet I couldn't act on it. Not yet. Not until I knew the full story. She was playing a game, and I had to learn the rules before I could even think about making my next move. In the days that followed, I began keeping track of her movements. I started small, noting when she left, when she came home, and how much time she spent at work. I wasn't ready to tail her physically. That felt like a step too far. But I did install a tracker on her phone, using an app she didn't know about. It was easy, almost too easy. One part of me felt guilty, like I was crossing a line. But another part of me, the part that felt betrayed, reminded me that she'd already crossed the biggest line of all. The tracker showed her usual movements, commuting to work, running errands. But then, one night, she went somewhere I didn't recognize. Not her office. Not anywhere we'd been together. She stopped for almost 2 hours at a hotel on the other side of town. My heart raced as I watched the screen, her little dot staying perfectly still in that one spot, and I knew without a doubt, this wasn't work. When she came home that night, I didn't say a word. I didn't ask how her meeting went or if she'd had a good day. I just smiled at her, feeling a cold satisfaction rising inside me. She didn't know that I knew. Not yet. But it was only a matter of time before her lies caught up with her. And when they did, I would be ready. The hotel. It all came down to that damned hotel. Every time I looked at the tracker and saw her dot appear there, my stomach twisted into knots. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Who was she meeting there? Was it the same person every time? Was this just some random fling? Or had she been seeing this guy for months? Maybe years? It was eating me alive, knowing I was being lied to every single day. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed the truth, the full picture, before I made my move. I tried to act normal, but I could feel the tension building between us. She hadn't changed her behavior. If anything, she seemed more relaxed, like everything in her world was perfectly in place. Meanwhile, I was drowning in a sea of questions and half-formed suspicions, struggling to keep my head above water. The turning point came one Thursday evening. She left the house in the same black suit she always wore for work, kissed me on the cheek and said, "I'll be late again tonight. Don't wait up." I nodded, keeping my face neutral, even though inside, I was burning. As soon as she left, I grabbed my keys. I couldn't do it anymore. Sitting around, watching her little dot move on my phone screen, wondering what was happening. No, this time I needed to see it for myself. I needed to be there. I followed her car at a distance, staying far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. The whole drive felt like a dream, like I wasn't even in my own body. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my mind racing with the possibilities of what I was about to see. But part of me still hoped that maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation, something that would make sense of all this. But when her car pulled into the parking lot of the hotel, my last shred of hope crumbled. I parked a few spaces away, watching as she got out of the car and walked inside. Calm, collected, like she'd done it 100 times before. I sat there for a few minutes, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, before I even realized what I was doing, I got out of the car and followed her. The lobby was dimly lit, quiet. A small place, not flashy, but discreet. I could feel eyes on me as I walked inside, but I didn't care. I spotted her at the front desk, speaking to the clerk. She was too far away for me to hear what she was saying, but her body language told me everything. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't worried. She felt safe. I couldn't believe it. How easily she moved through this world she'd created without me. She took the key card from the clerk and walked toward the elevators. I ducked into a corner, out of sight, my breath shallow and quick. As soon as the elevator doors closed, I rushed to the front desk. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe that I could pretend to be her husband, say I'd forgotten the room number. But the clerk, a middle-aged woman with dark hair pulled back in a bun, didn't even ask. She barely glanced at me before sliding a piece of paper across the counter. "Room 214, she said, as if it were routine. My stomach lurched. I stood there for a moment, staring at the paper, trying to calm myself. Then I headed toward the elevator. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I knew what was coming, but part of me still held on to some threadbare hope that this was all some misunderstanding. Maybe she was meeting someone from work. Maybe it was a business deal, some part of the mysterious 10 million I'd uncovered. But deep down, I knew better. The elevator doors slid open on the second floor. My footsteps echoed down the hall as I approached room 214. I could hear voices inside, hers, clear as day, and someone else's, a man's. The sound of his voice made my blood run cold. I stood outside the door, listening for a moment, barely breathing. I didn't need to hear what they were saying. It was enough to know she was in there, with him lying to me once again. I could feel the rage boiling inside me, the desire to kick the door in and confront them both right then and there. But I held back. I don't know how I managed it, but I did. Instead, I turned around and walked away. I left the hotel, got back in my car, and drove home. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and betrayal. But I knew one thing for sure. The game had changed. Confronting her now, in that moment of rage, would only give her the upper hand. She'd explain it away, manipulate the situation, and I'd end up even more lost than I already was. No, I needed to be smart. If she was capable of hiding this much from me, the affair, the money, all of it, then she was capable of anything. I needed to gather more information, find out who this man was, find out where the money was coming from. The truth was out there, waiting for me to piece it together. So I went home, sat at the kitchen table and waited. Sitting at that kitchen table, time seemed to stretch out, becoming almost unbearable. I kept staring at the clock, waiting for her to come home, my mind replaying everything I just witnessed at the hotel. Her voice, her laughter, easy, comfortable, like she was living some perfect life, free of guilt. How could she just carry on like that? How could she come back here and pretend like none of this was happening? I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, anything, just to feel the weight of this rage leave my body. But I held it in, barely. She walked through the door around midnight, later than usual, with that same rehearsed smile, like nothing in the world could rattle her. She gave me a quick glance, like she was barely acknowledging my presence, then hung her coat up and headed to the fridge. "You still up?" she asked casually, her voice completely void of concern. It struck me how effortless it was for her to lie, like she had been doing it for years. Maybe she had. "Yeah," I muttered, trying to keep my voice even. "Just couldn't sleep." "Long day?" she asked, her back turned to me as she poured herself a glass of water. "Long day?" I thought. Is that what we're doing now? Talking about long days while you're coming home from God knows what with God knows who? "Yeah, something like that," I managed to say, swallowing the bitter lump in my throat. I could feel my fists clenching under the table, my knuckles going white. I had never felt this much anger in my life, but I knew now wasn't the time. She was too calm, too composed. If I lashed out, she'd flip it on me somehow. I could see it playing out in my head, the manipulation, the excuses. No, I couldn't let her control the narrative. I needed more leverage, more information. She turned around, leaning against the counter, sipping her water like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You okay?" she asked, finally looking at me with just a hint of curiosity, maybe even concern, or at least the performance of concern. Okay, was she really asking me that? I wanted to snap, to tell her I knew everything. About the hotel, the money, the other man. But I didn't. I just stared at her for a moment, searching her face for any sign of guilt or remorse. There was none. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a lot on my mind." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer, and finished her water. "I'm heading to bed," she said, her tone light, like nothing had changed. "Don't stay up too late." And with that, she was gone. I watched her walk upstairs, feeling like I had just been in a room with a stranger. The woman I married was gone, and in her place was someone I didn't recognize. Someone capable of lying to my face with the kind of ease that made me question everything I thought I knew about her. The house felt suffocatingly quiet after she left the room. I sat there for a long time trying to make sense of it all, but the truth was nothing made sense anymore. My mind kept going back to that hotel room. Who was that man? Was it a one-time thing? Or had this been going on for months? Maybe even years? I had so many questions, but no answers. And the worst part was that I couldn't ask her. Not yet. I needed to be smart. If she could hide something as huge as $10 million from me, she could lie about anything. And I couldn't afford to play my cards too soon. I had to gather more information, figure out exactly what I was dealing with. The hotel was only one piece of the puzzle. The money was the bigger question. The next day, while she was at work, or wherever she went during the day, I started digging again. I went through her financials, tracing every transaction I could find. Took hours, but slowly a picture began to form. She had set up multiple accounts, some under her name, some under what appeared to be shell companies. The money moved from one account to another, sometimes even to overseas banks. It was a complex web of transfers that I could barely follow. But the most troubling part was that some of the money had been withdrawn in cash. Large sums. Enough to raise red flags if anyone had been paying attention. But somehow no one had. Not the banks, not the government, and certainly not me until now. Where was all this cash going? Who was she paying? And for what? I was deep in thought when I heard her car pull into the driveway. Panic hit me like a wave. I slammed the laptop shut and shoved it back into its usual spot on the counter, just as she walked through the door. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to act casual. She smiled at me, that same empty, practiced smile that now made my skin crawl. "Hey," she said, tossing her keys onto the table. "How was your day?" "Fine," I replied, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. I was getting good at this, the pretending. But deep down, I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the ground beneath me to give way. She went about her evening routine as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I could barely look at her without thinking about the money, the hotel, the man. I was living in the same house with her, but we were worlds apart. And as much as I wanted to tear down her web of lies, I knew I had to be patient. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. But that moment was coming. And when it did, I would be prepared. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I felt like I was living a double life, playing the role of the unsuspecting husband while secretly unraveling Sarah's lies. Every moment I spent with her was a test of my patience, a battle between my anger and the need to keep my cool. But I knew I had to stay focused. If I let my emotions get the better of me, she'd see through it, and then I'd lose my only advantage, the fact that she didn't know what I knew. The routine continued. Her late nights, the phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room, the excuses about work. I kept digging through her financials, piecing together the trail of money she'd hidden from me. Every day I learned something new, but it still wasn't enough. The accounts were too scattered, too complicated. I couldn't track down the full extent of it. But then, one evening, I got a break. I was scrolling through her emails again, most of them mundane work exchanges, when I saw something I hadn't noticed before, a message from a name I didn't recognize. At first, it looked like another business contact, but then the subject line caught my attention. Transfer confirmation, $250K. My breath caught in my throat. I opened the email, my hands trembling. It was short, just a few lines confirming that $250,000 had been transferred to an account at a bank I'd never heard of. There was no explanation for the transfer, no attached documentation, just the amount and the confirmation. What was she doing with that kind of money? And why was it going to an account that wasn't hers? I copied down the account number, my mind racing. This wasn't just about her hiding money from me anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. Was she laundering money? Funding something illegal? Nothing made sense. But one thing was clear. Sarah was involved in something far beyond an affair. I knew I needed help. I couldn't piece this together on my own. I'd thought about hiring a private investigator before, but I didn't want anyone knowing about my situation. Not yet. This time, though, it wasn't just about infidelity. I needed someone who could dig into these accounts, figure out what was going on, and give me the leverage I needed. The next morning, while Sarah was at work, or wherever she was, I made a call to an old friend of mine, Tom. We'd served together in the Navy years ago, and he'd gone into private security after retiring. He wasn't the type to ask questions, and I knew he could keep this quiet. When he picked up, I didn't waste time. "Tom, I need your help," I said, my voice low and serious. He didn't hesitate. "What's going on, Mike?" "I need you to look into something for me. It's complicated. I think Sarah's involved in something illegal. I found accounts, hidden money, millions of dollars. And I need to know where it's coming from and what she's doing with it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jesus, Mike, you sure about this?" "I wish I wasn't, but yeah, I'm sure." Tom agreed to help, and we made plans to meet the next day. As I hung up the phone, a wave of relief washed over me. Finally, I had someone on my side, someone who could help me get to the bottom of this mess. That night, Sarah came home late again, but this time something was different. She seemed distracted, almost distant, like she was preoccupied with something. I watched her carefully, looking for any sign that she might be onto me, but she acted as if everything was normal. Still, the feeling nagged at me. Maybe she was starting to sense that I knew more than I let on. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She nodded absently, not even bothering to look at me. "Yeah, something like that." I couldn't help but wonder what was going through her head. Was she thinking about that transfer? The one for $250,000? Did she think I'd never notice? Or worse, did she think I'd be too clueless to figure it out? I kept my distance for the rest of the night, trying not to push too hard, but inside, my anger was boiling. She walked around the house like everything was fine, like she hadn't betrayed me in the most profound way possible. But now the endgame was approaching and she had no idea. The next day, I met with Tom in a quiet diner on the edge of town. We hadn't seen each other in years, but he looked exactly the same. Rough around the edges, tough as nails, but with eyes that missed nothing. We sat in a booth, away from prying eyes, and I laid out everything I knew. The hidden accounts, the hotel, the transfers, the offshore money. Tom listened intently, nodding every now and then but keeping his thoughts to himself. When I finished, he leaned back in his seat, folding his arms across his chest. Mike, this is a lot bigger than I expected, he said. If she's moving money like this, especially offshore, there's no telling what she's involved in. Could be tax evasion, money laundering, something worse. I know, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. I just don't know what to do about it. I need proof. Something solid. Tom took a sip of his coffee, considering his next words carefully. I can look into it, but you need to be prepared for what I might find. This isn't just about infidelity anymore. Whatever she's wrapped up in, it could get ugly. I nodded, already knowing that things had gone far beyond anything I could have imagined when this started. Just find out what you can, I said. I need to know the truth, no matter what. As we left the diner, the weight of everything hit me again. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I was about to uncover something far more dangerous, and once I did, there would be no turning back. I was ready, or at least I thought I was. The following days passed in a haze of tension and dread. Every time Sarah walked through the door, I felt my pulse quicken, wondering if she could sense the shift in the air. Could she tell I'd gone from confused and betrayed husband to something more dangerous? Could she feel the walls closing in on her, even if she didn't know it yet? Tom worked fast, and each new piece of information he uncovered made the pit in my stomach grow. He called me one afternoon, his voice more serious than usual. Mike, we need to talk. Face to face. We met at the same diner. Tom looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usually confident demeanor replaced with something darker, more cautious. He slid a folder across the table, his eyes never leaving mine. You were right. It's bad. I opened the folder and there it was, proof. Not just of the offshore accounts, but of something far worse. Sarah had been funneling money into a series of shell corporations, most of which were tied to real estate deals overseas. At first glance, it looked like she was investing. But Tom had dug deeper, and what he found shook me to the core. Some of the names tied to those shell companies were flagged in international crime databases. Money laundering, fraud, possibly even arms dealing. I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't the woman I married. This was someone else entirely. Someone I didn't know, and someone I didn't want to know. Tom's voice cut through my thoughts. She's in deep, Mike. If the feds get wind of this, she's going down. And if they find out you're tied to her accounts in any way, they're coming for you too. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This wasn't even about the affair. Sarah was involved in something criminal, something dangerous. And if I didn't act soon, I could get caught in the fallout. But how the hell had she hidden this from me? How had I lived with her for 14 years and not seen any of it? I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. What do I do now, Tom? If I confront her, she'll deny everything. She's good at that. Tom frowned, leaning in closer. You need to play this smart. You can't just walk up to her and start throwing accusations. She'll twist it, make you doubt what you've found. Hell, she might even have a backup plan in case you do find out. People like her don't go down easy. People like her. The words hung in the air, heavy with a truth I didn't want to accept. She wasn't the Sarah I thought I knew. She was something else now, something darker, colder, more dangerous. Look, Tom continued, his voice low and steady. If I were you, I'd start protecting yourself. Get your finances out of any joint accounts. Start documenting everything. If this blows up, you need to be as far away from it as possible. You don't want to go down with her. I nodded, feeling numb. And what about the money? The 10 million? Tom's expression hardened. That money's dirty, Mike. You don't want any part of it. If she's been laundering it, the authorities will seize it the moment they get wind of it. You need to distance yourself. And fast. I sat there trying to process everything. It felt like my entire life was unraveling in front of me, thread by thread, and all I could do was watch. Sarah wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just hiding money. She was living a life I had no part of. A life that could take me down with her if I wasn't careful. When I got home that evening, Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. It was surreal. The woman who was casually sipping wine in our living room was the same woman tied to international criminals. I felt sick just looking at her, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Hey," she said, glancing up at me with a smile. "How was your day?" "Fine," I replied, my voice strained, but controlled. Couldn't let her know what I knew. Not yet. I sat down across from her, watching her closely. I wondered if she ever felt a twinge of guilt. Did she ever lie awake at night, thinking about the man she used to be married to, the man she'd betrayed in more ways than one? Or was it all just a game to her, a means to an end? "Something wrong?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I shook my head, forcing a smile. "No, just tired." She accepted the answer, going back to her phone, her world of lies intact. I couldn't take my eyes off her, though. How had I missed this? All the late nights, the unexplained trips, the money. It had been right there in front of me, and I was too blind to see it. But now I knew. And the question wasn't whether I would confront her. It was when. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, the weight of everything I'd learned pressed down on me. I knew I couldn't keep playing this game forever. The lies, the secrets, the criminal connections, it would all come crashing down eventually. And when it did, I needed to be ready. The next morning, I made a decision. I would quietly start moving my finances, separating everything I could from hers. I'd start documenting everything, every suspicious detail, every transaction. I didn't know how long I had before things blew up, but I needed to be prepared. And then I would confront her. But not until I had everything I needed. Not until I knew for sure that when the storm hit, I'd be the one standing. Not her. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. This was about taking back control. The day had finally come. It had been 2 weeks since I'd met with Tom, 2 weeks of quiet planning, moving money, documenting every detail of Sarah's life that she thought I didn't know. Every night, I laid beside her, pretending to sleep, while my mind raced with everything I'd uncovered. I tracked her movements, her calls, her emails, each day revealing another layer of deceit. And I stayed quiet. I played my role as the oblivious husband, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment was now. It was a Saturday afternoon. She told me she was heading out for errands. But I knew exactly where she was going, back to the hotel. I'd watched her routine long enough to know she would be gone for a few hours, giving me the perfect window. I stood in the kitchen, pacing, my heart pounding in my chest. The confrontation I'd been rehearsing in my head for weeks was about to happen, and there was no going back. When she came through the door later that day, she was calm, collected, the same empty smile plastered across her face. "Hey," she said casually, dropping her purse on the counter. "How was your day?" I couldn't take it anymore. "Sarah," I said, my voice hard, stopping her in her tracks. "We need to talk." She froze, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if sensing that something was different. I'd never used that tone with her before. Never let her hear the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "What's going on?" she asked, her smile faltering. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled out the folder Tom had given me. The one filled with bank statements, emails, and proof of everything she'd hidden from me. I slammed it down on the kitchen table, the papers spilling out in front of her. Her eyes widened just for a second. Then she caught herself, her expression hardening into something cold, calculating. "What is this?" she asked, her voice steady. Too steady. I took a step closer, my pulse racing. "You tell me, Sarah. $10 million. Offshore accounts. Real estate deals tied to shell companies. I've been watching you for weeks. The hotel. The money. The lies. All of it." There was a long silence. She didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Just stared at the papers as if they were insignificant. And then, without missing a beat, she sighed, crossing her arms over her chest. "I don't know where you got this," she said slowly, "but you're making a huge mistake." I felt a surge of rage rise up inside me. "A mistake? Sarah, you've been lying to me for years. Hiding money. Meeting some guy at a hotel while you sneak millions into accounts I didn't even know existed. You think I'm the one making a mistake?" She took a step back, her face now a mask of indifference. "You don't understand," she said quietly, her tone almost condescending. "You think this is about you? It's not. This was never about you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Then what the hell is it about, Sarah? Tell me. Enlighten me." She exhaled sharply, like she was debating how much to reveal. Finally, she sat down at the table, staring at the documents. "You wouldn't understand," she said again, more to herself than to me. "Try me?" I snapped, my hands trembling with anger. She looked up at me, her eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I did what I had to do. You think I was just going to live this life forever? The house, the bills, your boring job? I was suffocating, Mike. I needed something more. Something bigger." Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay focused. "So what? You stole money? You got involved with criminals? You cheated on me because you were suffocating?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not that simple. This isn't just about some affair. Do you really think I would throw away everything for some guy? You have no idea what I've been doing." "Then explain it to me," I said through gritted teeth, my patience wearing thin. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her lips curling into a smile that sent a chill down my spine. "I've been building something, Mike. Something you could never understand. It's not just about money. It's about power, control. The kind of control you can't get from a 9-to-5 life. I've been working with people, important people, people who know how to move money, how to build empires. What you found, that's just the surface." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So what? You're some kind of criminal mastermind now? This was all part of some grand plan?" She shrugged. "Call it what you want. But I was never going to live the small life you imagined for me. I'm done pretending." I stood there, speechless, as the truth of her words sank in. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to deny what she'd done. If anything, she seemed proud of it. Proud of how well she'd deceived me, how she'd built this secret life behind my back. I felt sick. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice quiet, almost defeated. "You walk away with your millions and your new life? What about us? What about everything we built?" She stood up, brushing past me with a confidence that made my blood boil. "There is no us, Mike," she said over her shoulder. "There hasn't been for a long time. You just didn't see it." Her words cut deep, but I wasn't done. "You think you're just going to walk away? You think I'm going to let you get away with this?" She paused at the door, turning back to face me, her expression unreadable. "What are you going to do, Mike? Call the cops? Turn me in? You'd go down with me. You're tied to everything now, whether you like it or not." I froze. The realization hit me like a freight train. She was right. I was tied to everything, the money, the accounts, the lies. If I went to the authorities, I'd be dragged into her mess. There was no way to untangle myself from her web. She smiled again, that cold, heartless smile that made my skin crawl. "Face it, Mike. You're trapped. You always have been." And with that, she walked out the door, leaving me standing there, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed. But she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. As the door clicked shut, I knew this was far from over. I wasn't going to let her win, not after everything she'd done. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I would find a way to make her pay. One way or another, this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door long after it had clicked shut behind her. The silence in the house was deafening, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a fog. She had just walked out after 14 years without a second thought. No remorse, no guilt, just cold indifference, as if the life we had built together had been nothing more than a footnote in her larger plans. But as the shock wore off, something else took its place. Clarity. She was right about one thing. I was trapped, tied to her mess, tied to those accounts. If I went to the authorities, my name would come up just as easily as hers. But she was wrong about the rest. She thought she had me beaten, that I'd just sit here, paralyzed by fear. But she underestimated me. She always had. I wasn't about to let her walk away so easily. Not with her millions. Not with her new life. And certainly not without consequences. I grabbed my phone and dialed Tom. He picked up after the second ring. "Mike? What's going on?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the concern. "She knows," I said, my voice low and cold. "She knows I've figured it out. The money, the hotels, everything." There was a brief pause. "Did you confront her?" "I did," I muttered, pacing the length of the kitchen. "And she doesn't care. She just walked out, like none of it mattered. Like I didn't matter." Tom sighed. "You were right, Mike. She's deeper into this than we thought. She's too confident. She's playing a bigger game. But listen, we've still got options. We can't let her walk away with everything." "She thinks she's untouchable," I said, gritting my teeth. "She thinks she's won. I can't go to the cops. She made sure of that. If I do, I'm going down with her. But I'm not letting her get away with this, Tom. I want her to feel what it's like to lose." "Okay," Tom said carefully, sensing the desperation in my voice. "We've got leverage. We've got enough on her that she's not walking away clean. But you need to be smart about this. Don't make any rash moves. You said she's been working with dangerous people, right? If we push too hard, she might pull them into this. And trust me, you don't want that." I stopped pacing, staring at the table where I'd laid out the folder of evidence. Tom was right, there were risks. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. If the people she was working with realized I knew too much, I could be in real danger. But there had to be a way to cut her off at the knees without putting my own neck on the line. "All right," I said finally. "What's the next move?" "First, you need to protect yourself," Tom replied. "Move what's left of your finances out of any joint accounts. Separate yourself completely from her, legally and financially. And we need to get more information. If she's tied to serious criminal activity, we need something solid, something you can use as leverage if this goes sideways. You said she mentioned other people involved, right?" "Yeah," I said, recalling her smug smile when she talked about her new life, her empire. She didn't give names, but she made it clear she's working with some powerful people. People who move money, big money. Then that's where we start. I'll dig deeper into her connections. You keep playing it cool. Don't give her any reason to think you're planning something." I nodded, even though Tom couldn't see me. "All right, keep me posted. And Tom, thanks. I don't know what I'd do without you." "We'll get through this, Mike," he said firmly. "But you've got to keep your head straight. This isn't the time to act on anger. Play the long game." I hung up, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. Tom was right. I needed to be patient. But every part of me wanted to take action now, to stop Sarah in her tracks before she could disappear completely. I spent the next few days quietly following Tom's advice. I moved the last of my money into a private account, separate from anything Sarah could touch. I contacted a lawyer, discreetly, to start preparing the groundwork for divorce, just in case things went that way. And I kept watching her, waiting for her to slip up, for any sign that I could use against her. Sarah, meanwhile, acted as if nothing had changed. She came and went, her smile as fake as ever. She even had the nerve to sit with me for dinner one evening, making small talk as if she hadn't just shredded our life together. It took everything I had not to confront her again. But I had to bide my time. Then one night I got a call from Tom. "I found something," he said, his voice tight. "You're not gonna like it." "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been digging into one of the shell companies tied to Sarah's accounts. The money she's been moving through it's linked to a known trafficker. Arms, drugs, money laundering. Big players, Mike. If she's involved with these people." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I felt the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just about the money or her affair. She was in deeper than I could have imagined. And if I wasn't careful, I'd be pulled down with her. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom sighed. "You need to get out, Mike. Distance yourself from her as much as possible. Legally, financially, emotionally. And you need to consider something else. What's that? She's dangerous now. If she thinks you're a threat, if she even suspects you might turn her in, she might do something drastic. You need to protect yourself. This is about survival now. I swallowed hard, the reality of the situation crashing down on me like a wave. I'd been so focused on confronting her, on getting revenge. But now it was clear that this wasn't just about a marriage falling apart. This was life and death. For a long moment, I sat there in silence, gripping the phone tightly. "I'll do whatever it takes," I finally said. "I'm not going down with her." And I meant it. The realization that Sarah was involved in something far darker than I ever imagined hit me like a sledgehammer. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. The woman I had spent 14 years of my life with was entangled with criminals, the kind of people who didn't hesitate to destroy anyone who got in their way. I wasn't dealing with a simple betrayal. I was in the crosshairs of something that could ruin me or worse. Tom's words echoed in my mind. She's dangerous now. If she thinks you're a threat, she might do something drastic. I knew he was right. Sarah was calculating, cold, and always 2 steps ahead. If she realized that I was closing in on her secrets, who knows what she'd be willing to do to protect herself. And now, with her connections to dangerous people, I was walking a tightrope, one wrong move away from falling into the abyss. I spent the next few days trying to act as normally as possible, though inside I was crumbling. Every time Sarah walked into the room, I felt my skin crawl. It took everything I had to keep the anger and fear from showing on my face. She was still coming and going as she pleased, continuing her business as usual routine. Meanwhile, I was quietly severing ties. The lawyer I'd contacted was already preparing the paperwork to shield what little assets I had left. The bank accounts were completely separated now, my name off everything we once shared. I thought I'd feel relief, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I knew that the longer I stayed, the more dangerous things could get. But leaving outright wasn't an option either. I needed something final, an endgame that would ensure I could walk away without looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. And I wasn't about to let her win. Not after what she'd done. That's when Tom called me again, late one night. "I've been digging more into those connections Sarah has," he said, his voice low and serious. "It's worse than we thought. One of her shell companies is not just a front for moving money. There's been chatter in some circles this company might be tied to a cartel." I felt my stomach drop. "A cartel?" I repeated, almost in disbelief. "Yeah, drug money, arms deals. They've been moving money through real estate investments and other channels, including her little setup. I don't know how deeply she's involved, but she's not just playing with fire here, Mike. She's in bed with the devil." I sat down, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. Jesus, Tom. How the hell did I miss this? How did I live with her for so long and not know? "Don't beat yourself up, man," Tom replied. "People like her, they're experts at keeping their secrets hidden. She probably didn't think you'd ever dig deep enough to find this. But now that you have, well, that changes things." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do I do?" Tom paused. "We need to think carefully about this. The cartel doesn't take kindly to loose ends, and right now, Sarah might see you as one. You need leverage, something to protect yourself. If she thinks you're going to blow up her operation, she'll act. And you don't want to be in her way when that happens." Leverage. It made sense, but what kind? I already had proof of the hidden accounts, the shady real estate deals. But the cartel? That was a whole other level. If I got too close, I'd be playing with forces far beyond my control. "All right," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "What kind of leverage are we talking about?" "You need to find something she values more than the money," Tom said. "Something she can't afford to lose. She's got to have a weak spot, Mike. Everyone does. You find that and you hold on to it. That's your ticket out." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. Tom was right. I couldn't just go at this head-on. Sarah had too much to lose and too many powerful people backing her. But if I could find her weak spot, something she couldn't risk exposing, I could force her hand. Maybe even take her down before she realized what was happening. The next morning, I decided to search Sarah's home office. She kept it locked most of the time, but I had noticed she often left her key on the kitchen counter when she wasn't thinking. I waited until she was out of the house, another one of her business trips, and slipped into the room, closing the door behind me. Her office was immaculate. Neat piles of papers, organized shelves, nothing out of place. But I knew better than to be fooled by appearances. I started going through her drawers, her filing cabinets, looking for anything she might have hidden. It felt wrong invading her privacy like this, but then again, she'd already violated every ounce of trust between us. At first, I didn't find much. Just the usual documents, work-related contracts, some tax forms, nothing incriminating. But then, tucked away in the back of one drawer, I found a small safe. My heart started pounding. I didn't know the combination, but I had a good idea where to find it. Sarah was careful, but she wasn't perfect. I searched through her desk and found what I was looking for. A small notepad with a series of numbers scribbled in the back. I tried the first one on the safe and the lock clicked open. Inside was a folder, labeled in her neat handwriting. I opened it, my hands shaking, and there it was, the leverage I'd been searching for. Passports. 2 of them. One was Sarah's, but the other, it wasn't mine. A man's name, someone I didn't recognize. He looked younger than me, his face smiling back at me from the photograph like he had no idea what was coming. Attached to the passports were plane tickets. One-way flights to a country in South America. The date? 2 weeks from now. She was planning her escape, and she wasn't going alone. That's when it hit me. This was her endgame. The money, the cartel connections, the lies. It was all part of her plan to run, to disappear into a new life with this man. She thought she could just walk away, leave everything behind, including me, and she had no intention of ever coming back. I stared at the tickets, the betrayal cutting deeper than ever before. She wasn't just walking away with her millions. She was erasing me from her life completely, starting over with someone new. I clenched my fists, anger and pain swirling in my chest like a storm. This was the leverage I needed. If I couldn't bring her down legally, I'd destroy her plan. She wouldn't get her clean break, her fresh start. Not if I had anything to say about it. I took photos of everything, the passports, the tickets, the safe. Then I put it all back exactly as I'd found it. When I closed the office door behind me, I felt a cold, grim satisfaction settle over me. Sarah thought she'd won. She thought she had everything under control. But she was wrong. Now I had the upper hand. And soon she'd know it. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a pressure cooker, with the lid slowly tightening as the days crept toward her planned escape. I went through the motions, acting like nothing had changed. We shared meals. We slept in the same bed. Occasionally, she'd flash that same fake smile and ask me how my day was. Each time, I'd bite back the rage boiling inside me, playing my part like a good husband. But inside, I was sharpening my knives, preparing for the moment when I'd tear her world apart. I kept those photos of the passports and plane tickets close, saving them to a hidden folder on my phone. I could feel the tension building as her planned departure day neared, but I waited. I knew I couldn't act too soon. She'd smell desperation if I confronted her too early, and I couldn't risk losing my leverage. No, I had to wait for the perfect moment, when she was most vulnerable, when she thought she had everything in place. The day before she was set to leave, I made my move. That morning, Sarah was as cool and detached as ever, packing a few things into a small suitcase under the guise of another business trip. She didn't even bother to hide it anymore. I watched her from the doorway, silently boiling, but outwardly calm. She thought she'd won. She thought this was just another routine day before she disappeared for good. But she had no idea what was coming. She left the house around noon, her suitcase tucked into the trunk of her car. The instant she was gone, I moved quickly. I grabbed the photos from the safe, the plane tickets, and the fake passports and laid them out on the kitchen table. This time, it wasn't just about shocking her with what I knew. This was going to be the end of the line for Sarah's web of lies. Then I made a call. Not to Tom this time, but to someone else. A lawyer who specialized in high-stakes divorce and financial fraud. I didn't care about being discreet anymore. I wanted to make sure she couldn't talk her way out of this. The man on the other end of the line listened carefully as I explained the situation. how Sarah had hidden millions, how she was about to flee the country, and how I was ready to expose every last detail of her crimes. Once you've secured the evidence, he said calmly, we can move quickly, but you'll need to confront her with it first. Make sure she knows you have control. She needs to feel like she has no way out. That was exactly the plan. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the documents spread out in front of me, waiting. My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. Sarah walked through the door just after 9. I watched her the moment she stepped inside, her face blank, the suitcase still in hand. She saw the papers first. For the first time in months, I saw her composure crack. It was just a flicker, a quick narrowing of her eyes, her lips tightening ever so slightly. But it was there. She knew she was caught. Care to explain these? I asked, my voice calm but cold. I motioned toward the passports and plane tickets. Sarah didn't move. She just stood there, her hands still resting on the suitcase handle, as if debating whether to run or to fight. She was calculating, always weighing her options. And now she knew the game was up. I think you know what's going on, Mike, she finally said, her voice low and smooth, but I could hear the tremor underneath. I was going to tell you. Eventually. Tell me, I scoffed. Tell me what, Sarah? That you're walking away from everything? That you're stealing $10 million and running off to South America with him? I pointed to the second passport, the face of the man who had been part of her new life. She didn't even blink. Her calm returned, but it wasn't the calm of someone who was about to confess. It was the calm of someone preparing for a different kind of battle. I did what I had to do, she said flatly, finally stepping into the room, her suitcase still by the door. This isn't about you, Mike. It never was. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I said through gritted teeth. You think you're just going to walk away? That I'm going to let you take everything? After 14 years? After what we built together? She gave a small, bitter laugh. What we built. Don't be naive. You were never part of this. I gave you a life. A comfortable life. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed more. And now I have it. I shook my head, disbelief flooding through me. You're a coward, Sarah. You couldn't even face me like a real person. You built your entire life behind my back. And now you think you can just walk out the door and disappear. Do you think I'm going to let that happen? She walked closer, leaning on the kitchen counter, her eyes hard. And what are you going to do, Mike? You have nothing. You found some documents? Congratulations. Do you think the police care about some offshore accounts or a fake passport? By the time you try to take this anywhere, I'll be gone. You won't find me. No one will. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. Maybe, but I've got enough to ruin you. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. Oh? How's that? I'm not stupid, Sarah. I know what you've been doing. The laundering, the cartel connections. I've got it all documented. Everything you thought I was too dumb to notice. And if you think I'm bluffing, think again. The lawyer I spoke to has enough to bury you. I watched as her expression flickered again, just for a second. The crack in her armor widened. Cartel? She repeated, her voice quieter now. That's right, I said, pressing my advantage. You've been playing with dangerous people. You thought you were smart enough to get away with it, didn't you? Well, guess what, Sarah? They know about you too. Tom. My friend who helped me dig this up, he's been tracking your transactions. They're watching you now. So, if you think running away to South America is going to solve your problems, think again. She was silent, her face turning paler by the second. I could see the gears turning in her head, the realization that she was cornered sinking in. For the first time, Sarah had no move left to make. What do you want? She finally whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. I let out a breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice firm. You're going to sign over everything. The house, the assets, everything in your name. You're going to vanish, Sarah. But not on your terms. You're going to disappear quietly, without a trace. No fake passports. No new life with your new guy. You leave it all behind. She stared at me, her lips trembling slightly. And if I refuse? I leaned in, my eyes locked on hers. You won't, because if you do, I'll make sure the people you've been working with find out exactly what you were planning. And trust me, they'll be a lot less forgiving than I am. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Sarah stood there, frozen, the weight of my words crushing whatever fight she had left. Finally, she nodded, a small, defeated gesture. Fine, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll do it. It was over. I watched her closely as she packed up the rest of her things the next day, leaving the house that had been ours for over a decade. There was no grand farewell, no final words of anger or regret. She just left, like a ghost, vanishing into the life she had tried to build in secret. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't care. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. She was gone, and I was free. In the days that followed Sarah's departure, the house was eerily quiet. After 14 years of marriage, the space we had shared felt both larger and emptier. It should have been a relief, and in many ways it was. But there was also a strange, heavy silence that hung in the air, like a weight I couldn't shake. It wasn't just the absence of her. It was the absence of the lies, the tension, the constant game I'd been forced to play. For so long, I had been living on edge, and now, with the fight over, I didn't quite know what to do with myself. I went through the motions. I met with the lawyer to finalize the transfer of assets. As promised, Sarah had signed over everything, the house, our joint accounts, and even her personal savings. She left with nothing but the clothes she packed and whatever plans she had for disappearing into whatever new life she thought she could find. I didn't know where she was, and part of me wondered if I'd ever hear from her again. But honestly, I didn't care. That chapter of my life was closed. What surprised me most, though, was how quickly I adapted. I had spent months trapped in a cycle of anger, paranoia, and fear, and now, with Sarah gone, I expected to feel lost. But instead, I found myself feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I had survived. I had faced the worst betrayal I could imagine and come out the other side with my life, my home, and most importantly, my dignity intact. Sarah had underestimated me, and in the end, that had been her downfall. Tom checked in with me a few times over the next couple of weeks, making sure I was okay and letting me know that, as far as he could tell, Sarah hadn't resurfaced anywhere. I appreciated his concern, but I had no intention of spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. If she tried to pull something again, I'd be ready. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't. Sarah was smart enough to know when she was beaten, and there was no coming back from this. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after she left, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where I had laid out the evidence that had brought her world crashing down. I stared at the empty space across from me, the place where she used to sit, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think about the early days of our marriage. Before the lies, before the money, before she became a stranger. It's funny how your memory works. The mind has a way of glossing over the bad parts when you're looking back, and for a moment, I let myself remember the woman I had loved, the woman I thought she was. I remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, the plans we had made together. In those early years, I never would have imagined that things would end like this, that the woman I married would turn into someone capable of lying, cheating, and stealing on such a grand scale. But as I sat there, I realized something else. Even in those early days, the signs had been there. Little things I had ignored. The subtle manipulations, the way she always had to be in control, even when she was pretending not to be. Maybe I didn't want to see it back then. Or maybe I had convinced myself that love was enough to make everything work. Either way, the woman I had loved never really existed. She had been a carefully crafted mask, a role Sarah had played perfectly until she decided it no longer suited her. And now the mask was gone. I stood up from the table and walked out into the backyard, feeling the late afternoon sun on my face. It was quiet out there too, but it was a different kind of quiet, a peaceful quiet. I could finally hear my own thoughts without the constant undercurrent of suspicion and fear. In the weeks that followed, life began to fall into a new rhythm. I reconnected with old friends, people I had drifted away from during my marriage. I focused on work, poured myself into projects that gave me purpose. I spent more time with my family, something I hadn't done enough of over the past few years. And slowly but surely I started to rebuild. It wasn't easy. There were days when I woke up and felt the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. Days when I'd catch myself thinking about Sarah, wondering where she was and if she had managed to start over. But those thoughts came less and less often as time passed. I learned to live with the scars, and eventually, they stopped hurting so much. One night, as I was sitting on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the sunset, I realized something that I hadn't allowed myself to think before. In a strange, twisted way, Sarah's betrayal had freed me. If none of this had happened, I would have spent the rest of my life living in her shadow, constantly trying to make things work, never realizing just how much she had manipulated me. She had broken our marriage, but in doing so, she had also broken the chains that had been holding me down for years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I was free. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was Sarah's. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, half expecting a plea for forgiveness or some kind of explanation. But it wasn't either of those things. It was short, just one line. "You'll never really be free of me." I stared at the words, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Fear, anger, sadness. But more than anything, I felt pity. Sarah was gone, yes, but she hadn't moved on. She was still playing her games, still trying to control me even from a distance. I crumpled the letter in my hand and threw it into the fire. She was wrong. I was free. For the first time in years, I was free. As I watched the paper burn and the flames die down, I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked back inside, closing the door behind me. I didn't look back. The night after I burned the letter, I slept better than I had in months, maybe even years. It was as if, in that final act of watching her words turn to ash, I'd managed to shake off the last of her hold on me. Sarah had tried to leave a shadow over my life, a permanent reminder that she'd always be lurking somewhere in the corners of my mind. But when I woke up the next morning, I knew she had failed. The house was quiet, but this time it felt right. I had no more plans to confront, no more schemes to unravel, no more lies to expose. Sarah was gone, and her last attempt to haunt me had crumbled just as easily as the paper I'd tossed into the fire. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I was no longer looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next blow would come. And it hit me. This was what real freedom felt like. I spent the day clearing out the last traces of Sarah's existence from the house. The things she'd left behind after our confrontation. Her old clothes, the books she never read, the photos she hadn't bothered to take. I boxed it all up and left it on the curb, not caring what became of it. With every item I packed away, I felt a weight lifting from me. Each piece was a reminder of who she had pretended to be, and each one belonged to a life I no longer needed to hold on to. As the sun began to set, I stood in the living room, staring at the now empty shelves. The house felt different, not like it was missing something, but like it was finally ready to be filled with something new. My life, for the first time in years, was mine to rebuild, brick by brick, on my own terms. The next few weeks passed in a blur, but it wasn't the frantic, tense blur of the months before. It was peaceful, methodical. I began to establish a routine. Simple things like making coffee in the morning without thinking about her, working on projects around the house I'd been putting off for years. I went back to the gym, started running again, and reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to since my life had unraveled. People were surprised to see me. Some of them had heard rumors, whispers about what had happened between Sarah and me, but I didn't feel the need to explain much. Those who knew me well understood, and those who didn't, they didn't need to know. Sarah's story was no longer mine to tell. One afternoon, Tom called to check in. He had been keeping a distance, giving me space since Sarah left, but I could tell from his tone that he wanted to see how I was holding up. "So, how are things on your end?" he asked, his voice casual. but I knew him well enough to know he was really asking if Sarah had resurfaced. "She's gone, Tom," I said, feeling the words resonate deeper than they had before. "For good this time." There was a pause on the other end. "You sure about that? I mean, I know what she wrote, but—" "She's gone," I interrupted, not needing to hear the rest. "Whatever power she thought she had over me, it's over. She can try to play games from wherever she is, but it doesn't matter anymore. She doesn't matter anymore." Tom was quiet for a moment, and then I heard the relief in his voice. "I'm glad to hear that, Mike. Really. You've come a long way from where you were." I smiled, feeling the truth in his words. "Yeah, I guess I have." We talked for a little longer about normal things, work, life, plans for the future. It felt good to have a conversation that wasn't about Sarah, wasn't about unraveling some twisted web of deceit. Felt good to just be. After I hung up, I sat on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The evening was cool, the kind of early fall breeze that signaled the start of something new. And as I sat there, a sense of calm settled over me. The storm had passed, and now it was time to move forward. One evening, as I was cleaning out the attic, I found an old photo album I hadn't seen in years. It was from the early days, when Sarah and I were first married, when life seemed simpler, more predictable. I flipped through the pages, seeing the younger versions of ourselves smiling, looking carefree, like the world was full of possibilities. I didn't feel the usual sting of betrayal or bitterness as I looked at the pictures. Instead, I felt a sense of distance, like I was looking at two people I didn't know anymore. We had been happy once. That part of our lives hadn't been a lie, but it had ended long before I ever realized. And now, looking back, I could see that clearly. Those smiles had faded years ago, long before the lies and the secrets began to unravel. I closed the album and tucked it back into the box, not out of anger or regret, but out of respect for what it represented, what was once good but had passed. I wasn't erasing the past. I was just choosing not to live in it anymore. A few days later, I decided to take a trip. Nothing drastic, just a few days on my own. I needed to clear my head, to see something other than the walls of the house I had shared with Sarah for so many years. I packed a small bag, got in the car, and headed north toward the mountains. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just wanted to drive, to let my mind wander without any of the weight that had been pressing down on me for so long. As the miles passed by, I realized that I wasn't driving away from anything. I was driving toward something unknown, but full of possibility. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by what had happened, by the woman who had betrayed me. I wasn't afraid of what was waiting for me when I got back. I wasn't looking for closure, because I'd already found it. I was free. When I pulled over at a scenic overlook, the sun was setting over the mountains, casting everything in a warm, golden light. I stood there, leaning against the car, watching the world stretch out before me, vast and open. It was a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time I was ready for it. Yesterday was an ordinary day. Well, almost. I got home a bit earlier than I had planned. Work surprisingly finished sooner, so I decided to use the time to spend with Lisa, our 7-year-old daughter. Maybe we'd play something or just watch a cartoon, like we usually did when Kate was busy. She was supposed to be home, but she wasn't. That struck me as odd because she'd normally leave something in the kitchen. A note, a message, or at least a few words via text if she wasn't going to be around. But no silence. And what was worse, my mother-in-law Janet was there. As soon as I walked in, something inside me tightened. Janet and I always had a strange relationship. She acted like she knew more than everyone else and thought her role in raising Lisa was practically primary. And Kate, my wife, allowed it. I never saw much of a problem until that moment, thinking it was just overprotectiveness from a grandmother. But what I saw when I opened the bathroom door made me freeze. Lisa was sitting on a chair in the middle of the bathroom, covering her face with her hands, and Janet was holding a hair clipper, shaving my daughter's hair. The floor was covered with Lisa's golden curls, which just a few hours earlier had gently fallen over her shoulders. Now half of her head was bald, as if she was going through some grotesque ritual I had never known about. "What are you doing?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. It was filled with such fury I almost choked on it. Janet didn't even pause. She calmly continued shaving, responding, "She needs this. Her hair is causing problems. She'll be more beautiful without it. And I think it's the best way to build resilience in her." "What? Build what? Are you out of your mind?" I lunged forward, yanked the clipper from her hands, and turned it off. Lisa was sobbing but silent, as if she was afraid to say a word. She sat like a little victim, sacrificed in some bizarre, insane ritual. "Leave her alone." I scooped Lisa into my arms, trying to comfort her, but she just cried quietly into my shoulder, her trembling body feeling fragile, like I was holding a branch someone had tried to break. And then Janet said something I couldn't have expected in my worst nightmare. "Kate knew about this. She was completely on board. It's for the guy she's with now. He thinks short hair is better. They decided it would be right for Lisa." My mind simply refused to process those words. A guy? What was this about? Kate knew? She allowed this? I stared at Janet, trying to figure out if this was some sick joke. But there was no joke. Her cold eyes were full of certainty. She truly believed she was doing the right thing, and even more, she believed she had the right to make these decisions without telling me. "Where's Kate?" I asked, trying to control my voice, which was on the verge of breaking into a scream. "At a meeting," Janet replied almost casually, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "A meeting with who?" "With him. They're having dinner together tonight. You know, you don't have time for that. You're always at work." She's just moving on. "And you need to understand that's normal." I felt my heart stop for a moment. This wasn't just some wild theory from Janet. She was talking about Kate actually cheating on me. And not just in some hidden way. She had already started bringing this guy into our daughter's life. They were shaving our 7-year-old's hair to satisfy his whims. Lisa had become a pawn in their twisted game, and Kate, the woman I loved and trusted, was supporting it. My mind was boiling with all these thoughts, but something inside began to harden into a cold knot of determination. I didn't know what I would do next, but one thing was clear. Kate would have to explain everything to me personally, and that explanation had to be complete. I couldn't sit still after what I just heard. Knew I needed answers, and I needed them now. My mind was a swirling mess. Anger, disbelief, confusion. But there was one thing crystal clear in all that chaos. I was going to find Kate. No more games, no more secrets. Called her. Twice. No answer. I muttered under my breath, grabbed my keys, and told Liza to stay in her room while I sorted this out. She just nodded quietly, too shaken to speak, still clutching at the remaining strands of her beautiful, butchered hair. "Where is she?" I demanded from Janet as I stormed back toward the front door. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, staring at me with that cold, dead look of smugness she always had when she thought she knew better than everyone else. "At a restaurant," she said calmly. "With him." "You're serious? She's on a date while you're in here shaving our daughter's head? You're out of your mind." I spat, grabbing my coat. "I'm just helping her move forward. Caitlin deserves better, and so does Liza. You've been too distracted to notice, but she's already made her choice." Janet's voice was annoyingly calm, like she was giving me life advice I never asked for. I froze for a second at the door. My heart raced as everything clicked together. The late nights, the random excuses, the strange, distant look in Caitlin's eyes lately. Pieces of a puzzle I never thought I'd have to solve. I got in the car, floored it. No clear plan, no idea what the hell I was walking into. But I was going to find them. I scrolled through our shared location app. Yep, there she was. Some upscale restaurant downtown. Perfect. I arrived at the place, heart pounding like a damn jackhammer in my chest. And there she was, right through the window, sitting across from him. Some douche in a crisp white shirt, laughing at whatever bullsh asterisk tea she was spinning. She looked different. It wasn't just her makeup or her outfit. It was the way she leaned in towards him. The way her hand rested on his arm like it belonged there. Like that should have been me, but it wasn't. I walked straight in, eyes burning with fury, adrenaline surging through every inch of my body. I wasn't here to make a scene. No, I was here for answers, for the truth. I strode up to their table, and Caitlin's eyes widened in pure shock. She dropped her fork mid-bite, mouth half open, like she couldn't believe I was standing there. The guy across from her just stared, confused, then looked at her for some clue as to what the hell was happening. "Nick? What are you doing here?" she stammered, trying to compose herself, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on her, burning holes into her as I leaned forward and said, "What the F*** is going on? Caitlin, you want to explain why our daughter's crying at home while your mother is shaving her head because you think your new boy toy here prefers her with no hair? You want to explain that?" Her face went pale. She glanced nervously at him, then back at me, her breath quickening. The guy, still confused as hell, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Nick, this isn't the place to." "No," I interrupted, slamming my hands on the table, making the plates rattle. "This is exactly the place. You've been lying to me, treating our daughter like some pawn in your sick game with him, and you think this isn't the place? Start talking, Caitlin. Now." For a second, she just sat there, eyes flicking between me and him, her mind racing to find an excuse, any excuse that could get her out of this mess. But nothing was coming. She was cornered, and she knew it. "Nick, it's not what you think," she said, voice wavering as she tried to keep her composure. "I was gonna tell you. Gonna tell me what? That you've been screwing around behind my back? That you decided this jackass gets a say in how we raise our daughter now? That you think it's okay to shave Liza's head because of his preferences?" I pointed straight at the guy who was now starting to look a little pale himself. Caitlin put her hands up defensively, her voice rising. "Don't you dare make me the bad guy here. You're never home. Nick, you've been so distant, so wrapped up in your work that you didn't even notice how things were falling apart. I had to make choices." "Choices?" I cut her off. "You made a choice to lie to me. You made a choice to let your mother mutilate our daughter for some random or you barely know. That's what you've done." The restaurant had gone dead silent. People were watching us now, forks frozen mid-air, whispering amongst themselves. But I didn't give a damn. My entire world was crumbling, and all I could feel was white-hot anger. Caitlin's lies, her betrayal, had torn through me like a wrecking ball, and all that was left was this raw, burning need for answers. "Nick, please," she said, now almost pleading. "Let's talk about this at home. We can figure it out. It's not like that. It's just what?" I hissed. "Just you throwing away 12 years of marriage because you got bored? Just you humiliating our daughter because this clown likes his girls with no hair? What kind of mother are you?" She stood up now, face flushed with a mixture of guilt and defiance, and hissed back at me. "You don't understand, Nick. You don't see how hard it's been for me. You're never around. I'm doing what's best for Liza." "Best for Liza?" I nearly shouted. "You've lost your ng mind." That's when it hit me, right there in that moment. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. This wasn't the life I thought I had. Every promise, every word, every little moment between us. It had all been one big lie, unraveling right in front of my eyes. But the worst part? Caitlin didn't even look sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was just pissed that she got caught. I looked at her one last time, my chest tight, the pain searing through me as I finally realized what needed to be done. And then, without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her and her new boy toy behind, leaving the life I thought I had behind. The truth was ugly, but it was out now. I walked out of that restaurant feeling like my insides had been hollowed out. The adrenaline that had fueled me moments before was crashing hard, leaving me with nothing but a pit in my stomach. Every step back to my car felt heavy, like I was dragging the weight of 12 years of lies behind me. I sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to punch something, scream, anything to break the numbness creeping in. But nothing came, just this awful, suffocating quiet inside me, the kind that makes you realize how alone you really are. I stared at the windshield, my mind running circles around everything Caitlin had said, or rather, what she hadn't said. She didn't deny the affair. She didn't deny letting that hole dictate how to raise my daughter. What kind of person lets someone else, someone outside our family, make decisions like that? I couldn't shake the image of Liza, her eyes red and swollen from crying, as Janet stood there like nothing was wrong, casually butchering her hair because some guy liked it better that way. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Caitlin had clearly made her choice. She didn't just cheat on me. She betrayed Liza, our own child. She let a stranger influence her. And for what? Some fleeting attention? Some thrill? She wasn't just hurting me. She was damaging our daughter in a way I hadn't even fully processed yet. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed answers. I needed to understand what the hell had gone so wrong. My phone buzzed on the seat next to me. It was her. A text. "Caitlin, please. Nick, don't do this. Come home and we can talk. I didn't want you to find out like that." Didn't want me to find out like that? That was her biggest concern? Not what she'd done to us, to Liza, but how I found out. I stared at the message, the audacity of it nearly making me laugh. She still thought she could control the narrative. Like this was just another mess she could clean up with a few carefully chosen words. Another message came through. "Caitlin, I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you, but we can fix this. You've been so distant, Nick. You must have seen this coming. We're not the same anymore." And there it was. The shift. The subtle blame she was laying at my feet. As if I had somehow pushed her into the arms of another man. As if I was the one who had invited him into our lives, let him manipulate our daughter's appearance, allowed Janet to become his accomplice. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't the one to blame here. I'd been working, sure, but everything I did was for our family, to provide, to make sure Liza had a stable future. But no amount of work or absence on my part could justify this. I shoved the phone into my pocket and drove home. I needed to be with Liza. She was all that mattered now. Not Caitlin, not this guy, not Janet. My daughter needed me. I sped through the streets, every red light making me want to scream. When I got home, Liza was in her room, sitting on her bed with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked so small, so fragile, like a bird with its wings clipped. Half of her head was shaved down to the scalp. The other half still had patches of her golden curls, making her look like she'd survived some kind of horror show. It was gut-wrenching. "Hey, sweetie," I whispered, sitting down next to her. She didn't look at me at first, just stared blankly at her hands. But then, after a few seconds, she crawled into my lap and buried her face in my chest. Her small body trembled as she tried to hold back the sobs, but they came anyway, quiet and heart-wrenching. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into her hair, kissing the top of her head. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here." "It's okay, Daddy," she murmured between sobs. "It's not your fault." But that only made the guilt worse. It felt like I'd failed her, like I hadn't protected her from any of this. How had I missed the signs? How had I let things get this far? I held her tight, rocking her gently, trying to soothe her while the anger inside me simmered. There was no fixing this. Not with Caitlin. Not anymore. Whatever excuses she wanted to throw at me, whatever reasons she thought she had, it didn't matter. Not after this. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I stayed with Liza until she finally fell asleep, her little hand clutching the fabric of my shirt like she was afraid I'd leave her, too. I didn't move. Couldn't. My mind was spinning, replaying every moment, every conversation, every lie Caitlin had told over the last few months. How many times had she sat across from me at the dinner table, smiling, pretending everything was fine while she was meeting him behind my back. And then I remembered something that had seemed small at the time, but now felt like a knife twisting in my gut. A few weeks ago, I'd noticed Liza had started wearing her hair in a tight bun. Every day. I thought it was a phase, just a new look she liked. But now I realized what it was. Caitlin had already started preparing her, conditioning her to get used to the idea of losing her hair. I wanted to rage. I wanted to storm out of the house and find Caitlin, confront her again, demand answers she clearly wasn't capable of giving. But I couldn't leave Liza. She needed me here, and honestly, I needed her too. She was the only thing holding me together right now. The house was silent, except for the soft sound of Liza's breathing as she slept. I stared at the ceiling, my mind made up. There was no going back. I wasn't going to let Caitlin or her toxic mother have any more control over Liza's life. I wasn't going to let them twist her into someone she wasn't, just to fit into their warped idea of what was better for her. Caitlin had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. But first, I needed to talk to her. Not for me. For Liza. The next morning felt like walking through fog. I didn't sleep much. My mind was too busy running over everything that had happened. Liza woke up early, her eyes still puffy from the night before. I tried to be as calm and comforting as possible while getting her ready for school, but the sight of her half-shaved head, those missing golden curls, kept slicing through me. I didn't want her to feel embarrassed or ashamed, so I found one of my old baseball caps and gently placed it on her head. "Just for today, okay?" I said softly. She nodded, but her eyes were distant. She wasn't the same, and I hated that. After dropping her off at school, I knew what had to happen next. I wasn't going to drag this out anymore. I wasn't going to let Caitlin twist her lies into something halfway believable. I needed to get everything out in the open, for Liza, for me, and for the life we were supposed to have. I drove home, mentally bracing myself for what was about to happen. Caitlin was already there, sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. The atmosphere was thick with tension. She was still wearing the same clothes from last night, a sign she probably didn't sleep much either. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee cup like it was a lifeline, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't have that mask of cool confidence on her face. "Nick," she started, her voice quiet, almost pleading. "We need to talk." "You're damn right we do," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't going to let her spin this. Not now. I sat across from her, the same table we'd had 1,000 meals at as a family. It felt like a crime to be sitting here with her after what she'd done. But I had to get through this, had to hear it from her lips. If she was going to blow up our lives, she was going to do it with full honesty. No more secrets, no more lies. She stared into her coffee for a long moment before looking up at me. I didn't mean for it to get this far. It just happened. Just happened? I repeated, my voice cold. "You don't accidentally cheat on someone, Caitlin. You don't accidentally let your mother shave our daughter's head because of some guy's preferences. This wasn't something that just happened. You made choices, and now I need to know why." Her lip trembled, and for a second I thought she might actually break down. But then she sighed, shaking her head like she was still trying to make sense of it all. "I don't know when things started falling apart between us. Nick, you've been so distant for months, wrapped up in your work, barely noticing what was happening here. I felt alone. And then I met Derek. Derek. Hearing his name from her mouth was like a slap to the face. Suddenly, he wasn't just some faceless guy anymore. He was real, tangible, a person who had wormed his way into our lives, and it made my stomach churn. "I didn't plan it," she continued, her voice shaky. "We were just talking at first. He listened to me, made me feel noticed, and then things escalated. I know I should have stopped it, but I didn't. I couldn't." I shook my head, feeling the anger bubble up again. "You couldn't? No, you chose not to. Don't sit there and pretend like you didn't have a choice, Caitlin. You could have ended it the moment it started. You could have told me we could have worked through it, but instead you lied. Over and over." She winced but didn't deny it. "I'm sorry, Nick. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't want to destroy our family." "But you did," I said flatly. "You let this guy get into your head, and then you dragged our daughter into it. That's the part one can't forgive, Caitlin. You let Janet mutilate Liza. And for what? Because Derek likes short hair? What kind of mother does that?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't feel sympathy for her. Not after everything she'd done. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. My mom. She thought it would be good for Liza, to make her stronger, to show her she didn't need to rely on her looks. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. "That's bulls asterisk asterisk asterisk, and you know it. This wasn't about making Liza stronger. This was about control. You let Janet and this Derek guy make decisions that should have been ours. As parents. As a family. You stripped me of any say in this, and you scarred Liza in the process." Caitlin's tears spilled over now, and she wiped her eyes furiously, like she was angry with herself for crying. "I was confused, Nick. I was lost. I didn't know how to fix things between us and Derek. He made me feel like I mattered again. Like I wasn't invisible." "Invisible," I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "You weren't invisible. I was here, Caitlin. I might have been busy with work, but I was here. You were the one who started checking out of this marriage long before I did. And now you're trying to justify it by saying you were lonely." She didn't respond, just sat there, sobbing quietly into her hands. I felt no pity for her. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about Liza, about what kind of future we'd have now that the truth was out. "Look," I said, forcing myself to remain calm. This isn't going to work anymore. I can't keep pretending like we can fix this. You've made your choice and I've made mine. Her head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with panic. Nick, no, don't say that. We can still fix this. We can go to counseling, talk things through. Liza needs both of us. Don't you dare take her away from me. I'm not taking her away, I said coldly, but I'm not going to let you or your mother decide what's best for her anymore. You're not fit to make those decisions. Not after this. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. I could see it in her eyes. She was losing control over me, over Liza, over everything she thought she could still manage. For so long, Caitlin had been the one pulling the strings, manipulating the situation to suit her needs. But now, she was watching everything unravel, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to make sure Liza stays with me. You can have visitation, but after everything you've done, after letting this guy and your mother dictate what happens in our daughter's life, you've lost the right to make any more decisions. She shook her head violently, her voice cracking. Nick, please, don't do this. I'll cut Derek off. I'll never talk to him again. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes, I swear. I stood up, my heart heavy but resolute. It's too late for that, Caitlin. You should have thought about all this before you decided to bring someone else into our marriage. You should have thought about it before you let Janet destroy Liza's confidence, just to please someone who shouldn't even be in our lives. You broke us and now we're done. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her behind, sobbing and grasping at the shattered remains of our life. But for the first time in months, I felt clarity. I felt like I was finally taking control, doing what needed to be done. For Liza and for me, this was the end of one chapter, but it wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. The house was eerily quiet after I walked out of the kitchen, leaving Caitlin sobbing at the table. For a moment, I stood in the hallway, letting the weight of the decision settle on me like a heavy fog. This was it. I said the words. I was filing for divorce. It was final now, no more indecision, no more second-guessing. But as soon as I stepped back into the reality of what was happening, a sudden wave of doubt crashed over me. Could I really go through with this? Could I really tear apart the life we'd built? The life Liza had known since the day she was born? I sank down onto the couch, elbows resting on my knees, hands clasped together. My thoughts were a mess of anger, betrayal, and damn it, still love. Not for the Caitlin sitting in the kitchen, but for the Caitlin I thought I'd known, the one I thought would always be my partner, my equal, the woman I thought I could trust with everything. But she wasn't that woman anymore. She was someone else. Someone capable of betraying not just me, but Liza too. That's what stung the most. She hadn't just cheated on me with Derek. She dragged our daughter into her mess, allowed Janet to manipulate Liza's appearance, and let this stranger have a say in her life. How could I forgive that? I heard Caitlin's footsteps approach. She'd stopped crying, but her face was pale and drained of all emotion when she stepped into the living room. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes puffy, lips pressed together like she was trying to hold something back. I get it, Nick, she said softly. I know you hate me right now. I deserve that. I know you probably want to never see me again, and I can't blame you for it. But I'm begging you, not for me, for Liza. Please, let's talk about this more before you do anything drastic. She's just a kid. She doesn't deserve to have her family ripped apart. I looked up at her, my mind swirling with conflicting emotions. I wanted to hate her, wanted to throw her out of the house right then and there, but at the same time, she was right. Liza didn't deserve this. None of this was her fault. You should have thought about Liza before you let this happen, Caitlin, I said, my voice low but firm. You should have thought about what you were doing to her when you let your mother bully her, when you let him, Derek, become part of her life without my knowledge. You think this is just about us? It's not. You've broken her trust too, and that's the hardest part to fix. She winced, biting her lower lip, knowing she had no defense for that. I know. IF **** it up. Okay? I've made a huge mistake, and I'm trying to fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to make things right with Liza. Please. I exhaled slowly, the weight of her words settling in. How do you plan to fix it, Caitlin? You can't undo what's been done. You can't make her forget what happened. I'll get her a therapist. I'll talk to her, apologize. I'll keep my mom away for a while. Derek's out of the picture already. I ended it last night. Her voice cracked when she said his name, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. Ended it? You expect me to believe that? You were with him last night, having dinner, laughing with him while our daughter was at home getting butchered by your mother. And now you want me to believe it's suddenly over because you got caught. Her face flushed with embarrassment and frustration. I made a mistake, Nick. People make mistakes. But I'm still Liza's mother. I love her. And I'm not going to let one mistake destroy my relationship with her. I won't let you take her from me. And there it was. The fear. The realization that her grip on Liza was slipping. Caitlin had always been the one in control of our daughter's day-to-day life, school pickups, playdates, ballet classes. She handled it all. She defined herself as Liza's primary parent, the one who knew her best. But now she was facing the very real possibility of losing that role, and she was desperate. You lost the right to call the shots when you let someone else step into our lives without my consent, I said, my voice hard. But I'm not going to fight you over Liza. I'm not going to drag her through a custody battle unless I have to. I'm not doing this out of spite, Caitlin. I'm doing it because she deserves better than this mess you've made. Her eyes narrowed, sensing my resolve. You're saying you'll let me stay in her life then? That we can figure this out together? For her sake. I shook my head. I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's going to be different. No more Janet calling the shots. No more Derek. If you want to be a part of Liza's life, you need to prove you're putting her first. Really putting her first, not just saying it. Caitlin clenched her jaw, fighting back the words I could tell she wanted to throw at me. She knew she didn't have the upper hand anymore, and it was tearing her apart. But the days of her controlling everything were over. She had to know that by now. I'll do what you want, she finally said, her voice tight with frustration. I'll keep Mom away. I'll stay away from Derek. I'll work on rebuilding things with Liza. But I'm not going to let you take her from me. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to promise her anything. Not yet. This was about Liza, and it was going to take more than just a few empty promises from Caitlin to fix what had been broken. My priority now was making sure our daughter was safe, mentally and emotionally. I stood up, feeling the exhaustion wash over me. We'll figure it out, Caitlin, but I need some time, and so does Liza. As I headed toward the door, she called out after me. Where are you going? I'm picking up Liza from school, I said without turning around. She needs me right now. We'll be back later. I didn't wait for her reply. I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door, leaving her standing in the living room, unsure of her place in our lives anymore. The drive to Liza's school was quiet. My mind was still buzzing from the conversation, but I kept coming back to one simple thought. I couldn't trust Caitlin anymore. Whatever was left between us had been shattered, and it wasn't going to be repaired. Not now, maybe not ever. The love I had for her was buried under layers of betrayal, and I wasn't sure if it would ever resurface. But that wasn't the priority anymore. The priority was Liza, keeping her safe, making sure she didn't suffer any more than she already had. When I pulled up to the school, I saw her standing there with her little backpack slung over one shoulder, the baseball cap still on her head. She spotted the car and smiled weakly, but it didn't reach her eyes. My heart broke a little at the sight of her trying to be brave when I knew she was still hurting. I got out of the car and knelt down in front of her. Hey, kiddo, I said, brushing a stray curl from her face. How was school? It was okay, she said softly. Nobody said anything about my hair. I smiled at her, trying to give her some comfort. You look great, cap and all. She hugged me tightly, and I held her, feeling the weight of everything that had happened sink in even deeper. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her down again. I would protect her from all of this. From Caitlin's mess, from Janet's controlling influence, from everything. Whatever it took. As I drove back home with Liza sitting quietly in the passenger seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. And not just between Caitlin and me, but between Liza and me too. It felt like the unspoken bond we'd always had was fraying, worn down by all the things I hadn't seen coming. The half-shaved head was the most obvious reminder, but the real damage wasn't something you could see. I glanced over at her. She was staring out the window, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. The baseball cap was too big, slipping down over her forehead. I knew she was trying to hide, trying to disappear into the background. away from the pain and confusion swirling around her. And it killed me. This little girl, who once danced around the house in princess dresses and bubblegum pink sneakers, was now shrinking into herself, closing off in a way I'd never seen before. She was only 7, but she'd just been through something no kid should ever experience. And I'd let it happen right under my nose. I parked the car in the driveway, but instead of getting out, I just sat there for a moment, thinking about what I needed to say. How do you explain to your kid that everything she thought was solid is crumbling? That the people she trusted the most, her mother and her grandmother, had put their own wants and whims ahead of her? Worse, how do I make her understand that none of this was her fault? I took a deep breath. "Liza," I said, turning toward her. She shifted in her seat to face me, eyes still wide and innocent, but with a layer of something new, something fragile. "Yeah, Daddy?" Her voice was small, barely more than a whisper. "Can we talk for a second? I need to explain something to you." She blinked up at me, nervous but curious. "Is it about Mom?" I nodded. "Yeah, it is. And about Grandma, too." Liza bit her lip, looking down at her shoes. "I don't like what Grandma did. I didn't want to cut my hair." My chest tightened. This was it, the crack in her trust one had to mend. I leaned forward, resting my hand gently on her knee. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry that happened to you. It wasn't right and it wasn't fair. And you need to know, from now on, no one gets to decide things like that about your body. Not Grandma, not anyone. You understand?" She nodded slowly, but her eyes filled with tears. "Why did Mom let her do it? I thought Mom liked my hair." My throat tightened. God, how was I supposed to explain this? How could I tell her that her mother had let someone else's opinion override her own? That Caitlin had sacrificed something so personal, so hers, just to keep another man happy? "It's complicated," I said, struggling to find the right words. "Your mom made some bad decisions. She let other people tell her what was best for you, and she didn't stop Grandma when she should have. That wasn't okay. None of it was." Liza wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, looking more confused than ever. "Is Mom mad at me? Is that why she let Grandma do it?" No, I said quickly, pulling her into a hug. "Mom's not mad at you. She just—" I paused, realizing that any explanation I gave would sound like an excuse, and I didn't want to lie to her. "She made a mistake, Liza. A big one. But that's on her, not you. You didn't do anything wrong. I need you to believe that, okay? None of this is your fault." Her little arms wrapped tightly around my neck, and I held her there for what felt like forever. I could feel her shaking, trying so hard to be brave, but the hurt was there. It had already taken root. "I don't want to stay with Grandma anymore," she whispered into my shoulder. "She scares me now." I felt a sharp pang of anger rise up again. Anger at Janet for ever making my daughter feel this way, and anger at Caitlin for allowing it to happen. But I pushed it down. Liza needed me calm right now, steady, reassuring. "You won't have to," I promised her. "I'm going to make sure you're safe from all of this. I'm going to protect you." Liza pulled back, her eyes searching mine. "Does that mean Mom won't be with us anymore?" I felt a lump form in my throat. "Your mom. She's made some choices that mean things are going to be different for a while. She'll still be in your life, but it might look a little different. Okay? Are you going to divorce her?" Liza asked bluntly, her voice small but direct. I blinked. The words sounded so cold coming from her, like she'd heard it before somewhere, but didn't fully understand what it meant. I wasn't ready to have this conversation yet, but here we were. I couldn't lie to her. "Yes," I said, my voice heavy. "Your mom and I are going to get a divorce." Her lip quivered, and for a second, I thought she might break down, but she just looked away, staring out the window again. "Okay," she whispered. I wanted to say more, to explain that it didn't mean we both didn't love her, that this wasn't her fault, but she was retreating into herself again. I didn't want to push her. "Do you want to go inside?" I asked gently, reaching over to unbuckle her seatbelt. She shook her head, still staring at the window. "Can we go to the park instead? I don't want to go home yet." I hesitated, glancing back toward the house. The thought of going back inside and facing Caitlin again, of continuing that painful back and forth, was the last thing I wanted right now. And maybe Liza felt the same way. Maybe she just needed to escape, even for a little while. "Sure," I said softly. "Let's go to the park." I pulled out of the driveway, heading toward the park near our house. It wasn't far, but it gave us enough time to breathe, to get away from the heaviness hanging over everything at home. When we got there, Liza ran ahead to the swings, her little feet kicking up gravel as she hurried to her favorite spot. I followed more slowly, watching her as she climbed onto the swing and pumped her legs, pushing herself higher and higher. For a moment, as I watched her, I felt a flicker of hope. This was still mine. She was still mine. No matter what happened between me and Caitlin, no matter how ugly things got, Liza and I would always have this. But even as I tried to hold on to that hope, a shadow loomed over everything. I wasn't naive. I knew Caitlin wasn't going to let go easily. She'd fight to stay in Liza's life, to maintain control, and as much as I hated it, I knew it wouldn't be a simple path forward. There'd be more battles ahead. Custody, court hearings, maybe even more manipulations from Janet. But one thing was clear to me now. I wasn't going to back down. I sat down on a nearby bench, watching Liza swing, her laughter breaking through the heaviness in the air. I knew things wouldn't be easy, but I also knew one thing for sure. I'd fight for her, no matter what it took. As Liza soared higher into the sky, a small, fragile smile crossed her face, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself smile too, because maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through this after all. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my phone light up. It was a message from Caitlin. "Caitlin, we need to talk. About Liza. You can't just leave like that." I stared at the message, feeling the weight of it settle in. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stared at the message on my phone from Caitlin, the screen glowing in my hand like some kind of warning light. I could already feel the tension creeping back into my chest, undoing the few moments of peace I'd found at the park with Liza. "We need to talk. About Liza. You can't just leave like that." I knew this was coming. The conversation at home had only been round one, and Caitlin wasn't the type to give up without a fight. I watched Liza swing higher and higher, her laughter drifting through the air, and I felt a sudden pang in my chest. This was her happy place, her escape from everything going on at home, and I wasn't about to let Caitlin or anyone else take that away from her. But at some point, I'd have to face this. I couldn't ignore Caitlin forever. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, she was right about one thing: we had to talk about Liza. How we were going to make this work, what her life would look like after the divorce, how much of a role Caitlin would still play. But how? How could I let someone who had caused so much damage be a part of Liza's life? How could I let her have any say after she let Janet turn our daughter into a pawn, after she allowed some random guy to dictate her choices? Every fiber of my being screamed that I needed to protect Liza from Caitlin, from Janet, from Derek, hell, from the entire mess they'd created. But the law wasn't that simple, and neither were Liza's emotions. As angry as I was at Caitlin, as much as I wanted to cut her out, I couldn't ignore that she was still Liza's mother, whether I liked it or not. I sat on the park bench, turning the phone over in my hand. I could call Caitlin back right now, meet this confrontation head-on, or I could wait. I looked at Liza, pumping her legs on the swing, her giggles making it all seem like none of this was happening. Maybe I could give her a little more time before the next storm hit. But Caitlin wouldn't wait. I stood up, walked a few steps away from the playground, and dialed her number. It rang twice before she picked up. "Nick." Her voice was tight, cautious, like she wasn't sure which version of me she was about to deal with, the reasonable one or the angry one. "Yeah, it's me. I got your message," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What do you want to talk about?" "You can't just take Liza like that," she said immediately, her tone sharp now, like she'd been holding back and was ready to go full throttle. "You left without saying a word, and I'm her mother, Nick. I have a right to know where she is, what's happening with her." "I'm at the park," I replied coolly. "She needed some space, and so did I. You can't just decide that on your own. We're both her parents. And you made decisions without me when you let your mother shave her head and dragged her into your mess with Derek." I snapped back, the calm I'd been trying to hold on to quickly slipping. "Don't lecture me about parental rights, Caitlin. You're the one who broke that trust." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, could almost imagine her biting her lip, trying to figure out how to spin this. "Look," she said finally, her voice lower, more controlled. "I know I made mistakes, big ones, but that doesn't mean you can just shut me out of Liza's life. You can't do that, Nick. It's not fair to her. Fair. I laughed bitterly. You think any of this has been fair to Liza? You let your mother bully her, Caitlin. You let some random guy dictate what's best for our daughter. And now you want to talk about fairness? I told you, Derek's out of the picture, Caitlin shouted. I ended it. I know I screwed up, but I'm trying to fix things. I want to fix things, Nick. It's too late for that. My voice was ice cold. This isn't about you and me anymore. This is about Liza and what's best for her. And what's best for her is to have both of her parents involved. She shot back. You can't just decide to take full control. I'm her mother, and she needs me, whether you like it or not. I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to keep the frustration from boiling over. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. There was no easy answer here, no clear path forward. Liza deserved both of us in her life, but Caitlin wasn't the same person I trusted for over a decade. How could I trust her with Liza's future when she had already let her down so badly? Here's what's going to happen, I said, taking control of the conversation. You want to be in Liza's life? Fine, but things are going to change. No more Janet. No more outside influence. You don't get to bring anyone else into this until you can prove to me that you're putting Liza first, not yourself, not your mother, and definitely not another guy. Got it. Silence on the other end. I could almost feel her simmering anger, her frustration at losing control of the situation. Nick, No, Caitlin. I cut her off. I'm not negotiating here. This is about Liza. You say you want what's best for her? Then prove it. Otherwise, I'll make sure the courts know exactly what kind of mother you've been these last few months. And believe me, they won't take your side. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. Nick, please, don't do this. Don't take her away from me. I know I messed up, but I love her. You know I love her. For a second, just a second, I hesitated. Despite everything, I knew she loved Liza, but love wasn't enough. Not after what had happened. Not when she had let things spiral so far out of control. I'm not taking her away from you, I said, my voice softening just a little. But I'm not going to let you hurt her again either. You want to be in her life? Fine, but it's going to be on my terms. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice breaking. I'll prove it to you. Just don't take her away from me. I stayed silent for a moment, processing everything. Caitlin was desperate now, and I knew I had the upper hand. But this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about protecting Liza from any more damage. We'll talk more later, I said finally. For now, I'm going to spend the day with Liza. I'll bring her home tonight. Caitlin's voice was small, defeated. Okay. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. It wasn't over, far from it, but I'd taken the first step. I'd shifted the balance of power. Caitlin knew now that she wasn't in control anymore, and that was something she'd have to come to terms with. I walked back over to the swings, where Liza was still gliding through the air, her laughter cutting through the tension like a bright ray of sunlight. Hey, kiddo, I called out as I approached. How about we get some ice cream? Her face lit up with a wide grin, and for a moment, the weight of everything lifted. She hopped off the swing and ran toward me, grabbing my hand. Ice cream? Yes, please. As we headed to the car, I couldn't help but smile. For now, at least we had a moment of peace. The storm wasn't over, but we'd weathered the worst of it. Liza was still my priority, my anchor, and I would fight for her every step of the way. But deep down, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. When I opened the front door, the house felt different. Quiet. Too quiet. I called out for Caitlin, but no answer came. Then I saw it. A note on the kitchen counter next to her keys.
If you're as shocked as I was and want to follow this journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for what happens next.
My heart sank. I unfolded the paper and read the words slowly, each one hitting me like a punch to the gut. Nick, I'm leaving. I need time to figure things out, to be the mother Liza deserves. I'm not fit for that right now. Please take care of her. I know you will. Caitlin. She was gone. I stood there, the note crumpled in my hand, trying to process it. After all the fights, all the anger, she just left. The relief I expected didn't come. Instead, I felt an eerie calm, like the eye of a storm. Daddy! Liza's small voice cut through the silence. I turned to see her standing in the hallway, looking at me with wide eyes. Where's Mom? I swallowed hard, bending down to meet her at eye level. Mom had to go away for a little while, sweetie. She needs to figure some things out. But she loves you. Is she coming back? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, I answered honestly. But no matter what happens, I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Liza nodded, though I could see the confusion in her eyes. She didn't fully understand, and maybe that was for the best for now. As I hugged her tight, I couldn't help but wonder, was Caitlin running away, or was she freeing us? The answer didn't really matter. What mattered was the space she'd left behind. Empty, but full of possibility. Maybe that was the real gift she'd given us. And maybe, just maybe, we'd be better off for it.
We bring you powerful real-life experiences of betrayal, resilience, and the strength it takes to keep going. Don't miss out. Join our community today, where we value truth, courage, and the lessons life teaches us.